Now, it's interesting because in one sense, I'm talking about letting go and dedicating, but then I'm also talking about having a bond with your children, because the bond is very important. There's first the imprint your parents set, but there's also the bond, how you relate to God, and really how you relate in this world is going to get formed over how well you developed a bond with your parents early on. Now, the Bible even talks about this. I go back to Hannah. She talks about after I've weaned him, right? There's a weaning that takes place. There's that bond. There's that connection. Many fathers check out at this stage. They're not involved. They'll go, wait, I'll wait till later. And they don't realize they need to be there too, because the bond needs to take place early. Many parents made the mistake of, well, when they get older and when we can play in the yard and do those fun things when they're teenagers, then I'll be more involved. It doesn't happen because the bond wasn't established. The bond needs to be established very, very early from the beginning. Whether you have a son, whether you have a daughter, that you learn to develop this important emotional attachment and connection in a healthy way. In fact, there's a whole segment of psychology that talks about attachment issues, and a lot of it comes down to there wasn't a proper bond that was set, a healthy bond. A healthy bond means there's emotional connection, but there's also empowerment to release the child to be able to function, to do things on their own. You teach them skills, and then you let them and see them practice. You don't do everything for them. There's a healthy bonding, but also empowering. The problem is that historically, many parents, they're lost in their own pain and fears. So they weren't able to be present to even make a bond. Many parents were lost in a sense of poverty or a fear of poverty, a sense of finances, and they are focused on that. So they're busy constantly with work and not able to be present to give you the bond that is needed. If you don't bond in a healthy way with your parents, then developing relationships, friendships, stepping out is difficult. You see, a healthy bond with your parents doesn't mean that you are now super glued to them. A healthy bond with your parents actually empowers you to want to step out and be the man or woman that God has called you to be. That's where you know a healthy bond has taken place, because there's also a releasing and empowering. Many are recognizing in their mental health journey, they didn't bond with their fathers. That's one of the big difficulties, that they didn't have an emotional bond. And so a woman who struggles with an emotional bond with her father will often be pulled to seek from it from other men in her life, but in a needy way, in a way of hoping that that emptiness in her heart can be filled. And this creates all kinds of relationship decisions and so forth. A man will struggle in his own life without that bond with his father. He'll struggle with insecurity. He'll struggle with a sense of who he is. He'll have identity battles. He'll have uncomfortability relating to other men in a fruitful way. He'll often go off on his own and feel like things, life and pressure is all on his shoulders. He has to do life on his own. So he comes under a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity, and who he is as a man, even a masculine man, can get stripped away from being developed in his life because he didn't develop that bond. When children don't develop the bond with the father, much of the emotional weight then goes over to the mother. And now she's carrying too much weight. She's carrying too much emotional weight of the family because the father's passive, and now she's taking on more. She's working through her own brokenness. She's struggling. She's under an intense amount of stress. Emotionally, physiologically, it's affecting her in all kinds of ways. And so now there can be unhealthy attachments going on because all of it is now a mother attachment, because a son needs his father. And without a father attachment, now you're attached to your mother. There is the part of leadership and adventure and taking risks that gets stifled in your life. And many men are manifesting this today because maybe they had a connection with mom, but their father didn't empower them. He didn't create the bond that we need to create in a man's heart that says, go and step out there and be able to conquer the things, to take risks, to take opportunities. My son, you can do this. You have what it takes to overcome. And we celebrate steps where you take a step out that was tough, whether it succeeds or not. And then we build upon that, and we build the overcomer. And so then what happens is we struggle in life to bond in healthy relationships, because God talks about the family of God and the bonds that we have, the fellowship and bond that we have as brothers and sisters in the Lord Jesus Christ. God designed your parents to have a healthy bond, but to also release you. The natural trajectory of a child over time is that you move from being a toddler to a child into teenage years. The teen years become the year of transition, where now things are being figured out. You're practicing, you're stepping out, but there's still that sense of covering. But then you move, and in teenage years, all of you recognize this. When you're a teenage, you want to push away from your parents. You get a little embarrassed sometimes when they're around, right? It's like, come on, and that is a good and healthy thing, because it means you're developing a sense of self, and it's celebrated, but you also have home base. But yet you step out, but you also have home base, because eventually you leave home base to step out on your own. This is all part of mental and emotional development. And this not happening in our lives in a healthy way, it will open up for all kinds of mental health battles. And because of unhealthy family dynamics, it will actually keep us in family strongholds, in family battlegrounds that keep us from stepping out into who we are as grown, overcoming adults.